Pecha Kucha 268 Techniques for Drawing Female Manga Characters. So, as I'm looking to do a manga over the next year, it makes sense to look at my How to Draw Manga books. This one is more specific than the last one I spoke about. It is specifically about drawing female manga characters. It doesn't contain a lot of naked women, but tries to balance, nudity with sexual explicitness. I don't believe it's pornographic. And showing this on YouTube, I believe, falls under fair use terminology because this is for the purposes of education, and even if it wasn't, I don't think it's really a problem. So it starts by trying to get you in the right frame of mind, giving you some kind of broad thinking steps, avoid drawing straight lines, think of the woman's torso as a figure eight. Really, this book is about starting with generalities and then moving into very specific things area by area. And I think one of the best things about the book is this idea of, everything is sitting on top of something else. And you will notice that there are slight edits for me putting this on YouTube. Those love hearts are not there in the actual book. Skeleton sits on the body, clothes sit on the body. You think about that as you draw, though you might not necessarily depict it. One of the things that is prolific throughout the book is hints and tips that will improve you from being competent to being professional. Things like, how to draw under the armpit, not something you'll typically need to do, but it's good to know when you do need to know. And, ways to think about drawing women. Really, the more lines you draw, the harder it is to make an aesthetically pleasing woman by today's standards. So you need to understand the form, and then you need to figure out how to depict it with the fewest lines possible, but every line needs to be in the right place. That's your challenge as a manga artist. The book is almost entirely about women, but it does make special note here about the differences in facial features between grown women and little girls. You are typically, as a mangaka, going to be drawing a lot of children because they're the main cast, they're your audience. You need there to be identification between those two groups. Something very interesting is the idea that you're not drawing women, you're drawing manga women. And there are anatomical differences between the way you approach representation of those two different groups. And I hadn't actually considered that. I know a lot more about anatomy now than I did then. It's interesting to note that you are in this book to make manga women. There are, 20 pages on how to draw breasts. That's probably what you came for. That's definitely in the book. They're pretty difficult to draw if you want them to look realistic. Hopefully this will help you. Then it moves on to bottoms. Really, hips and the positioning of the hips is a core fundamental principle of femininity, if that's a real word. And if you can't place the legs into the hips and then those legs on the ground, you've got a problem putting people in space. And then the behind from the front, the crotch. Again, the book tries to avoid being obscene, and I think it does a reasonable job while trying to help you come to terms with how the legs fit into the hip, because there's a lot to it, because bodies are malleable, people aren't made of plastic, so there's a bit on the hips, the bum, the crotch, the legs, and how all these things go together. And it is very helpful to actually think about the skeleton underneath, bringing it back to that earlier thinking. It helps you basically make what you want to do, even in a manga, realistic looking characters. You don't want people looking at what you're doing and thinking, hey, something's wrong. Another great thing the book does is point out that bodies bend and flesh, it contorts and stuff. So when women are sitting on stuff, when anyone is sitting on stuff even, you want to have a straight line to show that the surface is harder than the human body is. It spends only one double page spread on the neck and the collarbone, which I think maybe it deserves a little more attention since it's a part of the body that's very good for determining masculinity or femininity. And then once it's done with major anatomy, there's a fair amount of the book devoted to things like choices of attire, bras, underwear, clothing that you would typically see in your average manga, which is helpful because you don't really intend to draw a manga full of naked women, do you? Don't answer that. It's fine. I'm not judging. And the idea of figuring out how to place the clothes at extreme angles onto forms that curve, that's something that's got a lot easier now. We have digital art, but it only works if you bother to think that this is something you need to do. The book spends a little time looking at things like nails, makeup, different types of clothing. This is where most of the research comes forward for you when you're moving on from this, because you want your women to look fashionable or unfashionable, and you need to know which is which. It's only towards the very end of the book that the book actually bothers to talk about depicting faces, which is crucial to drawing manga characters. It's their defining characteristic, right? The big eyes. The book does take the time to do this. There's not a lot going on, but there's not that much needs to be said. You just need to draw the right shapes. And there is only half a page devoted to drawing from the profile, which is surprising. And then, I'm not really going to talk about it, but the back end of the book is reference images for clothing, school uniforms, underwear, the kind of things that are almost stock when you're drawing Japanese female manga characters. Right, so there's more to discuss than I can really fit into a 6-minute slideshow, but ultimately it's a easy to read, competently drawn book that will almost certainly improve the quality of your female characters, whether they're manga characters or not. But it is specifically designed to get you drawing manga characters. It does cover most major anatomy areas, with the notable exception of the upper back, which you really just need to draw the shoulder blades and the curve of the spine, and don't overstay your welcome. Like I said, it's full of helpful tips and hints that will help you be in the right frame of mind for things like how the breasts and the armpit taper into the shoulder and things like this. There are clothing references in there that are helpful for getting you started. It's always going to be necessary for you to go find your own kind of imagery to help with what you want to do in any specific instance. The book does take the time to help you try and think about how to draw these characters, regarding them as 3D, which can help you resolve issues where things are asymmetrical and they're not supposed to be. The book does want you not to just be looking at the surface. And as I've previously stated, the artwork is, like in pretty much all how to draw books, it's very rare that they're made by people who are at the absolute top of the game. This will help you be competitive with the average, but it won't turn you into a superstar. As always, you have to do the heavy lifting. One major drawback of the book is that there is only one body type. There's a small bit in the book that's about, athletic builds and stuff like that, but it's not actually worth mentioning. If you're looking to draw heavy set characters, you want a mix of age ranges and things like this, you're going to have to keep looking. This is really an excellent starting position if you've got no idea what you're doing. This is a gift for a kid that's just starting out. Well, I don't know about the nudity. I actually bought this as a schoolchild from my school library. No one seemed to be all that concerned about it. And like I said, I don't think there's anything particularly egregious in this book. But your mileage may vary, and I am aware that times have changed. I wasn't in school just yesterday. It's been a couple of years. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But that brings me to the end of my summation of this book. It's taught me pretty much most of the things I know about drawing women. Not that you've ever seen me draw women, and you probably won't. I don't draw a lot of anything, really. But it's a good book, and I strongly recommend it. I'm almost certain you can find it on Amazon or something for money, or on the internet for free. That's up to you. So that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 268, and I will see you next time.